Hey, good morning, everyone. Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Hey,
Good
good morning,
morning.
Brianna. Good
Good
morning,
morning, Professor.
Good morning, Professor.
good morning, Saurav, and good morning, Samira. Look, let's see. I see 9 people here, and let me quickly go to our forum and see how many people are there. Ah, it looks like 2 people in the collaborate session still need to sign into the discussion board. So please do it at your earliest convenience. Um, all right, so we were talking about the operating expenses last time. Remember, there are 2 sources of expenses, which is, first, direct cost and indirect cost. Direct cost is called CGS, cost of goods sold, um, which uh, which is account name used in accounting, which is the same thing as total variable cost, which is the name called in microeconomics. Um, And the CGS, or the variable cost, or the direct cost, it changes with the quantity. That's why it's called variable cost, because it varies with the quantity produced. And indirect cost is called operating expenses um, in accounting, which is roughly equivalent to a total fixed cost in microeconomics. And I told you, they are roughly equivalent uh, because the focus is a little different. Because in microeconomics, total fixed cost focuses more on the initial investment, which is the sunk cost. The sunk cost is already sunk into this business, so it doesn't change. It's a fixed constant. It's a constant. It's a fixed number. Um, and the fixed means it doesn't change with the production level, right? The production level is the quantity produced, right? The production level is the quantity produced is the production level. You should be able to, I mean, these things are basically like synonyms, and your ability to connect, right? Your ability to connect uh, or paraphrase the same thing, right? That really matters, not only in this course but in everything, right? When I say production level, and if you cannot connect it with this, right? If you cannot connect with this, then um, that's a problem, right? Um, because in essence they mean the same thing, although they go by different names. In essence, it means the same thing. Um, uh, but on the other hand, uh, in accounting, operating expenses focuses more on um, the cost that doesn't change with the production level. I mean, what's the difference? Uh, I mean, rather than focusing on the sunk cost, of course, sunk cost is already uh, reflected in the operating expenses because it's spread over a long range of production, right? Because you cannot recover. There's no way you can recover anytime soon. There's no way you can recover the sunk cost anytime soon. You will have to recover it by selling each unit of the product. And so to recover like $100 million, it's going to take a long time over a long production horizon, right? Um, so basically, in accounting, OPEX is focusing on something like rent or the salaries to the clerical staff, which are not related to the production level. So remember, where did I put the okay. Where's the financial statement? Okay, down here. Oops, where is it? So you see, if you take a look at the operating expenses, these are the line items, right? In the operating expenses, rent. For example, think about it. Suppose you run a coffee shop, right? You will have to rent that, store space, right? The rent doesn't change, rent doesn't go up or down with your production level, right? Some months your business is great, so you sell, think about it. If running a coffee shop, also you can break it down into I don't know if I use that example or not, but you can break it down into a fixed cost and variable cost, right? Because the variable cost, okay, even in coffee shop, right, running a coffee shop, right? What would be the variable cost? Variable cost would be something like, first of all, quantity sold, quantity produced and quantity sold will be a number of cups, a number of, coffees. You cannot say coffees, actually, think about it. Number of cups of coffee that you sell, right? So there is, capital, labor, and raw material, right? Raw material is coffee bean, water, sugar, and things like that. Labor, the barista hours, or if you pay the barista by the production level, I mean, if 10,000 cups of coffee are sold, and per each coffee, if you're selling the coffee for $3 per cup, and $2 would be $2 would be uh, variable cost, let's say, and 50 cents fixed cost maybe. And among $2, barista 50 cents per cup to barista, right? And then you coffee beans, water, sugar, 50 cents, usage of capital, the coffee machine, electricity, whatever, no, and the fixed cost is the rent and utility and things like that. And you might wonder, isn't electricity included in the utility? No, this utility is basically, the utility to keep the store lighted and heated, things like that. I mean, think about it. That would be relatively constant, right? Lighting up the store space. That's relatively constant. In the winter, heating would be relatively constant. In summer, air conditioning would be relatively also constant because And also sometimes the building owner, right, in the rent may be included. But this is a business space, and it would only your utility bill will only go up or down depending on how much electricity is used because of your coffee machine, right? Lighting up the building, heating the building, it would be relatively constant. But basically, the more coffees you make, more cups of coffee you make, right? This will go up or down, right? Barista hours, barista pay, wages to barista, it goes up or down depending on how many cups you make and sell. Raw material, right? Also depends on the quantity. However, rent doesn't change. Good month or bad month, good business or bad business, they will still collect exactly the same rent. So that's clearly fixed cost. And then, as part of the operating expenses, and then now back to the Dell computer manufacturing. Think about it. There are two types of workers. One, production workers, and the production workers are directly involved in a production activity because they are working on the assembly line, right? They are working on the assembly line. So their wages, their hours will go up, right? Or number of them will go up. If you double the production, so there is production workers and non-production workers. Non-production workers are basically administrative and clerical staff, like secretary, right? Administrative and clerical staff. Secretary will be a good example. Secretary. So think about it. Production workers' income, production workers' wages, not hourly wages, but total wages, depend on how many hours they work. How many hours they work depends on the production level. In other words, the quantity. It depends on the production level, right? The quantity. So if you double the production level, right? You will have to double everything in the direct cost, right? In other words, you'll have to double capital, labor, and raw material. That's the only way you can double. And then doubling the labor can mean one of the two things. One, you double the number of workers. Two, double their hours, right? In reality, it will be some combination of the two. But first, doubling the number of workers is unrealistic. Why? Working in on computer manufacturing or automobile industry is skilled labor, right? Skilled labor takes time to foster, right? You cannot just pick up someone from the street and just put them on the assembly line, right? And the auto workers, they are, some people are have expertise in building engine. Some people have expertise in fuel system. Some people have expertise in electric wiring, electrical system. Some people are experts in brakes. In other words, they all have skilled degree of skills, right? And even, think about it, even plumbers have, they have union. Plumbers have, and plumbers are unionized. They have to go to plumbing school and get, plumbing license and things like that. So that's, and so calling the plumbers is a very unknowing thing, because they charge a lot for even just a visit. They charge, just for visit, $50 to $80 just for a visit. And why is this, I mean, why can't it be better? Why can't it be bettered? It's because they are unionized. If you're not union part of, and they don't you cannot work as a plumber if you don't have a plumber license, or you don't, and if you're not a part of the union, if you're not a member of the, and then if someone does, plumbing without the license or without being a member of the union, then the union can find you, and union can, sue you, right? So all this, think about it. Same thing with the automobile industry. Electricians are licensed, and they have to be trained and licensed, and then once they are licensed electrician, they must be, uh, they must be uh, uh, they must become, a union member, right? Otherwise, there will be a lot of, legal persecutions, So the same thing. So you can, in automobile industry, right? Um, uh, uh, a lot of, assembly line workers are basically skilled labor, and you cannot, just pick up anybody. So doubling the number of workers is, unrealistic. It's totally unrealistic, right? Because you cannot suddenly, you cannot find, twice as many skilled workers, that can work in this, industry. Uh, I would say, it may not be to that degree, but, in computer manufacturing, it would pretty much be the same thing. Um, in the low income, low wage countries, they all make, things, computers in low wage countries, and in those countries they usually sweatshop. They recruit young girls for this work. Young girls, from the, countryside, who don't have any education, just barely graduated from, middle school, and just, looking for a job, and they recruit these girls and put them on a training for a while, and some simple labor, very low skill, simple labor, like, like uh, air showering, some, wafers, and probably very low level skills they can do. But on a high level skills, the supply of the labor that is skilled enough to do that job is quite limited. So, uh, as I said, production workers, it's hard to double their numbers. You need to double their numbers when you double the production level, but doubling their numbers is unrealistic. On the other hand, you can, uh, I, on the other hand, you can also double their hours. But again, this is unrealistic because people collapse. You cannot work double time. I mean, maybe, because you're getting the double pay, you work double time, right? If you work double time, you will get double pay. So, but, maximum will be about 2 weeks, because if you keep working, normally you work 8 hours a day, but if you work 16 hours a day, how long can you last? How long can you last? 2 weeks will be maximum. And if, as fatigue piles up, right? As fatigue, piles up, then there's a good chance you may make mistake. on the job, right? That could lead to a serious defect in the product. You can be, you can, you can doze off on the job and, right? Makes a serious mistake in the product. So the company won't, be able to continue to practice this for a long time. So that's why I said in reality, it will be like a combination of the two. But the point is, when you double the production, level, right, all direct cost will have to double. That means all direct, right, cost, capital, labor, and, right, raw material, they must all double. But on the other hand, non-production workers such as secretaries, right, clerical, administrative, and clerical staff, their hours, they don't. When you double the production, do you need to double the number of secretaries? Think about it. When you double the production, do you need to double the number of secretaries? Anyone? Nobody's following. Huh?
Yes.
Yes. I'm not sure, but I would say yes.
Yeah, for the work increases.
No. Actually, think about it. It is no. You don't need to double the number of secretaries. Look, when you double the production, what doubles is the production level. So the number of production workers or number of their hours must double. But secretaries are not directly working on the production line. They are non-production workers. So why would their numbers double? The company will get busier, right? The company will get busier, so obviously they will need to work a little more. Secretaries will be a little busier, but you don't need twice as many secretaries, right? Isn't that right? That's just a logical thing, because secretaries are not working on the assembly line. They have nothing to do with the production level. Okay, their hours, maybe they don't need to their numbers don't need to double. Their hours doesn't need to double. Their hours may need to maybe 5% more, right? They need to work, just 5% more hours or 10% more hours. But that's not like, see, once again, what does their wages fall into? Their wages fall into indirect cost. Right? That's why there is this, arrow. I made arrow, right? The arrow comes from the secretaries and goes into the operating expenses. What does that mean? Secretaries' salaries don't belong to the direct cost. It goes to the operating expenses. Because why? Because it doesn't change with the production level. It doesn't, because it is indirect. This indirect cost. This is logical thinking. In other words, you have to link these things to the clues given before. You cannot just jump off and, oh, that's freewheeling. That's wild guess, I mean, you said, some of you said, yeah, because the production doubles. So, but then, yeah, that may be logical. You think, because the production level doubles, the secretary's numbers double. No. We have made a distinction between direct cost and indirect cost. And I said, there are two types of workers: production workers and non-production workers. Non-production workers They are non-production workers because their work is not directly related with the production level, right? Their work belongs to the indirect cost. Their cost belongs to the indirect cost because their work is not directly related to the production level, right? So rent, just like rent, salaries to the clerical staff or administrative staff, right? Secretary being the representative of all this, right? Their numbers don't depend on the production level. Their hours don't depend on the production level, right? The connection is at best indirect. The connection is at best indirect, right? So that's what the OPEX is. That's what the indirect cost is. Okay, so you have to you should be able to see that in the framework of fixed cost and variable cost. And I gave also the example of coffee shop, right? Variable cost of the coffee shop, capital, labor, and raw material. Look at it from this frame of thought. Okay, fixed cost, what doesn't change with the quantity, right? Variable cost, what changes with quantity. Okay, and then so if you subtract all the expenses from income, right? If you subtract expenses from income, then it's called operating profit. Again, it's also called operating income, but I've been telling you, income is not the proper term here. Okay, it's just that the accounting keeps using the term income, which can be the cause of confusion, which can but accounting has an excuse for that. But again, I don't like the term income to be used here because from here, income is used interchangeably with profit. The better term is operating profit. And another way to call operating profit is EBIT, earnings before interest and taxes. So, you should familiarize yourself with two sets of nomenclature, right? One, this column, left column, the other, the right column. In the right column, earnings before interest and taxes. I prefer this nomenclature because it tells you what's going to happen next. It tells you already, what comes next. And we understand earnings means the same thing as profit, because if it is operating profit and if it is earnings, then earnings means profit. Earnings before interest and taxes tells you already is earnings before paying interest. So it tells you already what comes next. What comes next is interest. So you pay interest, right? And why do you have interest? You have interest because to start up this business, you borrowed money. I mean, there are only two ways you can suppose. I believe I already talked about this. No? Yeah, remember what sunk cost is? Do you remember what sunk cost is? Sunk cost is the initial investment, right? And you understand what initial investment is. Think about it. This is a computer manufacturing. So basically, to start up a computer manufacturing on a large scale, you will need definitely a huge amount of capital. Of course, all startup businesses start small, of course, because they don't have capital. It's a well-known fact that Bill Gates started to hand build, right? Manually build computers, PCs, from his father's garage, right? Steve Jobs did too. So, so did Michael Dell. They all started, building, the computers manually from their father's garage. Okay, and distributed through a chains network of networks like chain networks like Radio Shack in small quantity because they were just manually building. But then so at that time obviously they didn't have a huge plant, but over time they got noticed by venture capital, right? They got noticed by venture capital. So the venture capital offered to invest, let's say, like 5 million. Okay, 5 million doesn't buy you much. I mean, these days, you can probably get a warehouse by 5 million or some, store space. But they once they get get an investor like venture capital, and from their own they can they can start to borrow. I mean, using the capital. If the venture capital invest 5 million, using that they buy or they buy production equipment, right? And then using that production equipment as the collateral, then they can probably get a loan from the bank, right, for another 5 million. Then the total 10 million, and this way they can they grow big. But let's say let's just fast forward and skip through all these minor steps, right? They grow gradually, but let's say they were able to secure a lot of they were able to get like 60 million from the venture capital. And then using that as the collateral, right, they were able to get a $40 million loan from the bank. Okay. So the 60 million is called equity. And if you think what you got from the venture capital is what you borrowed. No, venture capital became shareholder by investing 60 million. They become the shareholder of the company, right? This 60 million would be, like 95% of their share. That means and the other 5% is owned by you, because if you are the founder, right, you are entitled to your own venture, right? But that means you are not the only owner. You have only 5% ownership. The other 95% ownership is whoever provided this capital, which is So that's called equity. Equity is your own capital, owner's capital, right? And then the other 40 million is called debt. Together, that's 100 million. That 100 million is called total assets. Okay. $100 million is called total assets, right? And then this, so you can say your 60% of your total assets is equity, 40% of your total assets is debt. And this is called capital structure. So capital structure is, basically nothing but, this is called capital structure. It's nothing but how much of your total assets came from equity, how much of it consists of equity, and how much of it consists of debt, right? That's capital structure. And the capital structure is basically, if you remember, that's what the balance sheet is all about. Capital structure is what the balance sheet is all about, right? That's capital structure. Now, yeah. But why do you need $100 million? First of all, raising $100 million, raising this much capital, that's a very difficult thing for a startup, right? Because why? Because there is no venture capital that will invest like 60 million to a startup. And there is no lender that will lend $40 million to a startup. Why? Because startup is a big question mark. Startup is always right? It can take off or it can turn into a complete flop, right? So, so in reality, this is just an unrealistic scenario. But to carry out our thought experiment, we'll have to assume some unrealistic scenario, right? Venture cap. So let's say you are able to get a venture capital invest $60 million in you, and you are able to get $40 million from the bank, which is unrealistic. But we'll just assume, hypothetically that. And why do you need? Then the question is, why do you need $100 million? Of course, you need $100 million because you want to build a plant. Most of this $100 million will go into plant and equipment. Right? Plant and equipment is called, so let's say $90 million. That's $90 million. You need $90 million to build plant and equipment. Right? So plant and equipment is basically called, physical capital, right? Another name for that, physical capital. Or it's in the balance sheet, it is called fixed assets or physical assets, real assets, right? Real assets or non-current assets. Why isn't it moving? Okay. Moved. Right? Fixed assets, physical assets, real assets, and non-current assets. Okay, assets. So fixed assets, non-current assets, real assets, they are all basically physical capital. Yeah.
So basically, this 100 million is the money that we need to take the business to the point that can make money.
Yeah. $100 million is the capital needed to set up our business and put it into working order. In other words, in computer manufacturing, any manufacturing, you cannot put your business in working order without plant and equipment. Isn't it right? So the plant and equipment, the size of the plant and equipment is the size that is that 90 million can afford, right? I mean, you can have a smaller plant with, suppose you have $9 million, but with $9 million, the plant size will have to be very small. The plant size will be 1/10 of what $90 million plant would be like, right? Makes sense, isn't it right? Plant size is basically determined by the capital you invest in it. If you invest $90 million into it, you will build a plant that $90 million can afford, right? Whereas if you put $9 million into it, you can only build a plant that only $9 million can afford. And then what difference does it make? The difference is that the size of the plant determines the maximum production capacity, right? Isn't it right? If you have a $90 million plant, the size of the plant will be about 10 times bigger than the $9 million plant. It may not be exactly linearly proportionate like that, but at least roughly you can expect that at least roughly $90 million plant will be like 10 times the size of the $9 million plant. And the maximum production capacity of $90 million plant will be about 10 times the maximum production capacity of $9 million plant. Right? Does that make sense? And then think about it. If you have 10 times bigger production capacity, that means your market share will be 10 times bigger than $9 million plant. The bigger market share means bigger revenue, bigger sale, bigger revenue, right? Bigger revenue means, a bigger profit, right? And also, that's why they all want to grow big. Look at, all of these industry giants. Why do they want to become industry giants? Because they want to dominate the market. If they dominate the market, basically, they are beating up all the competitors, right? Of course, if you beat up all the competitors and you completely dominate the market, then you are a monopoly. But of course, there is, they can, other than the natural monopoly, like utilities, you cannot have a complete monopoly, because obviously the other guys are also big too, right? Even look at the mobile phone market, right? Apple is a big guy, but Samsung is also a big guy. Actually, Samsung is, Apple is only making, iPhones, and but Samsung Electronics is not only making phones, but it's making everything else, all electronics, everything electronics. Samsung is so. Only in the mobile phone, smartphone market, Samsung and Apple are like big competitors, and of course Apple is a huge company. I mean, market capitalization, which means total value of the stock, by the market price of Apple is about $3 trillion. 3 trillion is somewhere between the GDP of Germany and UK. But of course, market valuation doesn't necessarily mean the size of the plant, because that's just how much the stock is being traded at. But by size of the total assets, or by size of the farm, Samsung is I would say Samsung is a bigger giant, because it's in all of the electronics. They are not only making they are making AC, air conditioner, TV, whatever, right? All electronics. I can't just. But think about it. But still, dominating, these two giants are dominating the market. These two giants are dominating the market. That means more of all the people in the world. How many people are in the world? I believe there are like 8 billion people, 8.8 billion people in the world, 6.6 billion people in the world. Probably half of them use Samsung, half of them use iPhone, or maybe there are some other small, but maybe not, so it may not be 50-50, but Apple, maybe Apple 40 something percent, iPhone 40 something percent, Galaxy 39% or 41%, whatever. They are basically the benefit of being big. There's certainly they want all market dominance, right? So that's why they need $90 million plant and equipment, right? Because it does at least 10 times more than $9 million plant, and the other 10 million will be that's called the other. So I wanted to talk about the other 10 million. That's called working capital, or non current assets, or working capital. So this is balance sheet and income statement are fused now, but it is inevitable. The reason I was talking about this was, look, remember 40 million came from debt, right? 40 million came from debt. So if you have debt, there must be interest, right? Interest, because you have debt, you pay interest. That's why you pay. There is interest, and so it's about time to take a break. So we'll take a 10-minute break and reconvene 10 minutes later, which will be like 12:03. All right. All righty. Let's take a 10-minute break. All right, we're back. We're back. All right. So now we understand where interest, why we are paying interest, and where that interest came from, right? Um, so after paying interest, right? Um, remember, I said previously we have two columns of nomenclature, right? The left column is, what they call it commonly. The right column is, uh, the acronyms that are used specifically in accounting. Um, but um, I said, the right column, right? The nomenclature in the right column is what I prefer because it is self-explanatory, right? And it is, so self-predicting, right? Um, we know from the name we can tell what has to come next. What's going to come next is interest because the name is earnings before interest and taxes, right? So we know the interest will be the next one. What comes next? Okay. Of course, I'm not going to duplicate interest here, right? There's no need to interest. Interest is interest. Whether you call it, whether you follow the left column of nomenclature or the right column of nomenclature. But think about it. After paying interest, what should it be called after paying interest? First, let's think about what it should be called in the right column. After paying interest, how should the name change after paying out interest? Anyone? How should the name change after paying interest? Is there anybody?
Is it gonna be net profit?
No, 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 no. It's not net profit. You're making a big jump. Think about it. It is earnings before interest and taxes. And then you paid interest. You only paid interest. So then once you have paid interest, then what should the name be? How should the name change?
Earnings after interest taxes?
No, it's not after interest and taxes, it's after interest, but you haven't paid taxes yet. How can it be earnings after interest and taxes? I mean, yeah, good thinking. I mean, good thinking. I mean, at least you set the foot in the right direction, right path. But think more logically. Think harder. You just paid interest, so then what should be the name? And I always assume that you have already watched the main lecture videos. Huh? And if you have studied, I want you to always, stay ahead of the game. Watch the videos when they were assigned, and if you've been following, I mean, look, all of these videos are already grayed out. That means they are already, more than 5 days old. And now the current and the active ones are these. So you should have already, and you should be caught off all the way to this by today, right? And if you have already watched all of these, then you should know. So anyone? Come on, use your brain, use your logical thinking. Look, it was EBIT, EBIT, right? And then from EBIT, Okay. From EBIT, think about it. I is what? That's interest. It's gone. So what should it be called then? Now what should it be called? Interest is gone. So now what should it be called?
Is it just
Earning
EBT
before
now,
tax.
Professor?
Yeah, it's just EBT. It's just
Earning
EBT.
before tax.
Earnings before taxes. And who said this? Who said that? Who was this?
Samira.
Who is this?
Samira.
No, Samira. I don't know if you, maybe, but there was this gentleman who said
I
that.
said earning before tax. Maybe.
Oh, Randall.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. All righty, Samira, both of you, and Randall. This
Yeah.
is 1101. Yes, Samira and Randall, you got, both of you got 0.5. Today is 3038. 0308. All righty, yeah. It should be called EBT, or earnings before taxes. Think about it. I dropped out, earnings, then, EBT. So I've been telling you over and over, I like the nomenclature in the right column because it is self-predicting. And if you can, if you understand what that stands for, then you know what's going to happen next. So here are earnings before taxes. So what would be its counterpart in the left column? What would be its counterpart in the left column of nomenclature? Think logically. It's the earnings before paying taxes. Earnings before, right? Before paying taxes. In other words, this is the earnings, the profit, subject to tax, subject to taxation. So what should it be called then? Now, anyone? What should be its counterpart in the left column? Don't you think it should be called a taxable income? Huh? Isn't that taxable income? Isn't that exactly what EBT is? Earnings before taxes, earnings before getting taxed, earnings before getting taxed, right? What is earnings before getting taxed? That's taxable income, right? Everyone's following?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Oh, okay, only 2 people. What about the others? Only 2 people following. But following this logic is not difficult, right? This logic flows very naturally, right? Earnings before interest and taxes. So next comes interest. And then after interest drops out, after I drops out, then it should be EBT, earnings before taxes. That's the earnings right before paying taxes. So what should be called? Taxable income. And then what's next? What should come next?
Pay
Anyone?
tax.
Yeah, you pay taxes. In other words, taxes come next. You'll have to pay taxes, right? And then after paying taxes, right? So who was that? That was Samira, right? Wasn't it? Wasn't?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So you got another 0.5. So think about it. Then taxes come next. After paying taxes, if you follow the right column of nomenclature, now what should it be called?
Net income now.
Yeah, that is the that's the left column. I didn't ask net. I didn't ask about the left column. Okay, I didn't ask about the net income or net profit. Again, I don't like
Or earnings.
income. Huh? I don't like income. That's not the right term, but you know, I've been telling you, that's just accounting. Accounting does that. The better term is net profit, right? Net profit, net profit. So in the right column of nomenclature, what should that be called? You paid taxes. Taxes are gone, so what should it be called?
Earnings.
Is that all? But earnings, everything is earnings. We started the term earnings started from here. Earnings, earnings. Now is just earnings.
Net earnings? I don't know.
Now follow the logic of nomenclature. Follow the logic of naming. It was before paying taxes. It was earnings before taxes.
Oh, earning after tax?
Yeah. Yes, of course. Earnings after taxes, or EAT. EAT, earnings after taxes. Right? So that's the conclusion of the income statement. Income statement will come to finally will come to net profit or EAT, right? Net profit or EAT, which could be positive or negative, right? But here, so that was Samira again, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Samira, you're getting another 0.5. Yeah, earning. So think about it. It's logical. That's why I say I like the right column of nomenclature, because it is self-predicting, right? It's almost like a self-prophecy. If it is already making a self-prophecy, isn't it right? EBIT. Oh, then what comes next? Interest, because it's earnings before interest and taxes. What comes next? Interest, right? It's like a self-prophecy already. And then after paying taxes, interest, then it becomes, because I drops out, it becomes EBT. I drops out, earnings before taxes. It's a self-prophecy. Next comes what? It's making a prophecy about itself already. Right? Can't you see that? Can't you see how flawlessly and how fluidly the logic is flowing there? Even a second grader can predict what's going to happen next. It's saying earnings before taxes. Then, if you can follow the logic, then what happens next is taxes. What comes next is taxes. Right? So you subtract taxes, then that will be earnings after taxes. So how easy it is to follow this type of logic. It flows so smoothly and naturally. It's giving you already all the cues and clues about what's going to happen next. So it's like a self-prophecy. And if you still don't get it, right? If you still can't follow this, then you have only yourself to blame. Don't you think so? Now, again, one thing I've been telling you, one thing I don't like about accounting is that okay, so small. They repeat, the same terminology, over and over, which can be the cause of confusion. But I told you they have a good excuse for that, and so because I understand that excuse, I don't blame them anymore. But the point is, okay. The use of the term income. Here, income from here, first of all, income is gross income, isn't it right? It means gross income. Yeah. Not there. What am I? It's gross income, right? The term income first appears here, and that's gross income. But from here, it is profit, right? From operating income, it is profit. So you might think, oh, income and profit are interchangeable. Well, from operating income and down, yes, it's interchangeable, but that can cause you also to think that, oh, then I can call this income. Huh? Can you call this, I can call this profit. Can you call this profit? Huh? No, you cannot call that profit. You cannot call that profit. Because it's gross. It's gross, and from gross state, you subtract something, and then you subtracted expenses, and then you arrive at operating income. So from here, this income is totally different from this income, right? That income is gross income. This is not gross income. So then some people might automatically, without even watching this, without even looking at this, then they say, oh, if it's not gross income, then is that net income? But look, does it say it's net income? That's operating income, not net income. Net income is net profit only when you arrive at, in other words, to arrive at net income or net profit, it's after paying out interest and taxes. Before paying out interest and taxes, there is no net income. Right? So don't confuse income with profit. That's the silliest thing in the world. The silliest thing. After all this, if you still confuse income with profit, that's the silliest thing. Okay? Income is more revenue. Income is revenue, right? Revenue and profit are two different things. Okay? So that wraps up everything about income statement. The conclusion of the income statement is net profit, or EAT. Again, but then there can be also dividend that comes after this. After paying out dividend, then what's remaining is called retained earnings. But then again, this is not the end of the income statement. Right? The end of the income statement is profit. This is just, additional, right? This is, because paying out dividend is optional, right? Companies can pay out dividend or not. It's optional. Now, so Now we're moving on to the balance sheet, but we already understand something about balance sheet, right? We understand. So where would I put it? Yeah, here's a good starting point. So it's not moving. All right. So the reason it is called balance sheet is so we already understand what the big chunk of the balance sheet. First of all, balance sheet consists of asset side and liability side. Okay. Let me bring up. Okay. And the asset side, right, mainly consists of asset side consists of, let's assume that this is, we'll assume this is $100 million. And the physical assets or non-current assets, right? Plant and equipment, land, building and land. That's the main component of the non-current assets. The name goes again. Let's assume this is $90 million. Okay, most of it is physical capital, right? So physical assets, real assets, right? I'm not going to write everything here. Physical assets, real assets, fixed assets. Fixed assets, real assets, physical assets, non-current assets. So out of 100 million, if 90 million is non-current assets, that means current assets are 10 million, right? And current assets are also called working capital. Okay, working capital. A current asset is also called liquid assets. What's happening? Okay, it's not working. Now, what is working capital? Think about it. Just because you have plant and equipment, right? And it will take time because you have to build a plant, and building a plant takes a lot of time. It will take at least, the construction alone will take at least 1 year, right? And then installing the equipment in the plant. Um, that takes also, several months to, half a year, but while the plant is being built, right? And I've been telling you, that's why it's sunk cost, because once you invest, $90 million into a plant and equipment, and there is no turning back, because you cannot recover that $90 million anytime soon. It's sunk into this business. And then you only need, at this point, you need to go forward. There's no other way, no turning back. So you have to finish the plant and, start production and generate revenue, right? From the revenue, you will need to you will need to recover this initial investment of 100 million, and then to recoup 100 million, you will need to you can only do that over a long range of production, just to break even. After breaking even, then it's going to be profit. But so the point is, until the plant is completed, and until you churn out the first batch of products and sell them and generate the first round of revenue, the company needs to be funded by something. The company needs to be funded. The administrative staff, it's a downtime actually for the production staff. If you are a production worker, you are hired already before the plant is completed, because obviously you cannot hire. It will take long time, and you may not be able to recruit everyone needed if you do that after the plant is completed, right? So you have to hire people even before the even before the plant is completed. Then while they are being hired, you still have to pay them, right? So this is actually a downtime for the company, but still during the downtime, the company must be funded, right? The company must be, company must pay expenses and pay utility and things like that. So what pays for that is the working capital, right? Does that make sense? 90 million is paying for the plant and equipment, building and land, but the 10 million is keeping the company afloat. It's keeping the company afloat while the company is fully while the company is still being built, and until the company is on its own 2 feet and fully functional, right? Does that make sense? That's the so that's the composition of the asset side. And the liability side, think about it. You remember equity, which is the owner's capital. Remember, venture capital invested 60 million. Remember, venture capital invested 60 million, and the other 40 million came from debt. And the debt breaks down into long-term debt, right? Non-current liability means long-term debt. Current liability means short-term debt. And you know, the line between short-term and long-term is 1 year. Is that arbitrary in finance and accounting, right? In economics, it is long-term. It's not, that arbitrary in economics. In economics, when everything is in steady state, then that's long-term. Until everything is in steady state, or in equilibrium, everything is in equilibrium, until then, everything is short-term. That's in economics. But in finance and accounting, 1 year, longer than 1 year. 1 year is the shorter than 1 year, longer than 1 year. That's the line. So 40 million breaks down into a long-term debt and short-term debt. And let's say out of 40 million, 30 million is long-term debt. And then let's say 10 million is short-term debt. Okay. Now then, the total of the liabilities and equity side, it must be also 100 million. Right? Makes sense? So the asset side and liabilities and equity side must balance out. They must balance out. Hence, called balance sheet. If they don't balance out, they are not balance sheet. Right? Just, because obviously there is a reason why it is called, balance sheet, because both sides must balance out. Otherwise, it's not balance sheet. And here's what is an asset? Then the next question is, what is an asset? What's an asset? The definition of asset, right? What is an asset? Okay. Asset is defined as, at least on 3 levels, right? In accounting, they say asset is what you own, liabilities are what you owe. Now they pit it against each other. They pit assets against liabilities. As if, but actually, if you think about it, what you own, if you define it in terms of whether you own or owe, it's a bit incomplete. Why? You all understand. I just explained this. Assets must balance out with debt and equity. Right? That's what the definition of balance sheet, that's the definition of the balance sheet. Assets must be equal to debt and equity. Right? The liabilities and equity. Now, if you, so think about it. If assets are what you own and liabilities are what you owe, but then what is equity? I mean, what about equity? What is equity? Huh? Isn't equity what you own? If you think about it, equity is what you own. I mean, from the owner's perspective, this is the owner's perspective, right? From the owner's perspective, equity is what you own, right? So this is a little weird. I mean, if assets are what you own, and equity is what you own, you cannot pit assets against debt and equity, right? So actually, the way in accounting, the reason they pit assets against debt and equity is because they see it as not from the owner's perspective. They don't see it from the owner's perspective, but they see it from company's perspective. They see it from the company's perspective, because from the company's perspective, assets are what the company owns, but debt and equity are what company owes, right? First, debt is what company owes to the lenders or creditors. And then equity is what they owe to the shareholders. Okay. So if you look at it from the company's perspective, this all makes sense. But then again, company is when you treat company like a person, but actually company is not a person. Isn't that right? A company is an inanimate entity, right? Company, in other words, company is only a vehicle, right? Why? What company makes, the profit of the company, the profit is not the profit of the company, actually, if you think about it. The profit belongs to whom? Why isn't it moving? So when you arrive at this, EAT or net profit, who does that belong to? Who does that net profit belong to? Anybody? Who does the net profit belong to? Is there anyone? Anyone home? Wow, a lot of you left already. All right, so I guess, that's almost it. But keep in mind, look, EAT belongs to the owners. This belongs to the owners, not to the company. Right? Profit belongs to the owners. It doesn't belong to the company. Right?
I wanted to say owners, Professor, but I didn't want to be wrong, so I just kept quiet.
No, it doesn't. Look, it's okay. I mean, you can be wrong. I mean,
sometimes
you
I
better be
second guess
wrong
myself,
now.
and then when you say
You
the
better
answer,
be wrong now and be correct in the exam.
Yeah.
Right? There's no harm. There's no penalty in being wrong during the class, but there will be a penalty in being wrong, right? In exam, right? So anyway, so profit doesn't belong to the company because company is only a vehicle. Company is an inanimate entity, and company is a vehicle for funneling that profit to the owners, who are the shareholders. Okay, so keep that in mind. We're out of time, so I'm going to I'll have to call it a day. So have a great afternoon, everyone.
Professor, quick question. When do we start?
Okay, hold on. I will first dismiss the class and stop recording, and then you can ask. I will stay, okay? So class is dismissed. Have a great afternoon, everyone. And I will stop sharing and stop recording, okay?